Welcome to this webinar. So hello there, welcome to this webinar. The webinar is on Team 360s, understanding their effectiveness when developing dynamic teams. It's going to last about 20 minutes or so. So firstly, a little introduction to myself. My name is Laura Pollock and I'm a consultant here at Quest Partnership. As I mentioned, we have about 20 minutes scheduled for this webinar, and an additional 10 minutes if anybody has any questions. Feel free to give them to post them now, or also to post them via email afterwards if you want to. So the webinar overview, we're going to be looking at what are 360s, what is the added value of them in general terms, and specifically applying them to building team effectiveness, so team 360s as opposed to just individual 360s. And hopefully all of this will become clear as we go through this webinar, what exactly we mean and why they're really valuable as a tool to use. So firstly, what are 360s? You may have heard the term. It's quite a jargon term used in occupational psychology and business. Basically, what we're referring to is a system or process in which employees receive confidential, anonymous feedback from the people who work around them. So as the image shows here, what it's looking at is one person gaining a 360-degree perspective based on other colleagues' feedback. So this might typically involve managers, so manager or managers, peers and colleagues, customers, and direct reports. So essentially we want to get the most rounded view from all different angles, all the different people that know us or work with us, so we can gain the most valuable insight. In case some of us aren't aware, I'm just going to take us through the general 360-degree process. So this is whether we were doing an individual 360 questionnaire or whether we're doing it for teams, because ultimately what will happen is in a team dynamic, we will have each individual completing the questionnaire, and then we're looking at a much more collaborative basis, all of the collective results. So the first general step with a 360 process is we need to construct the questionnaire, which is where we're going to collect our data from. So this is going to be our measure. In order to do that, though, we need to do a little bit of kind of background research and analysis to find out what exactly it is we want to measure. So that might be selecting our key competency areas. Now, for some organizations, they have organizational competencies as well as department competencies or even team competencies. For others, it might be specific areas. So, for instance, you may want to look at safety within your organization and give feedback on people's perceptions of safety. So that might be one area we want to look at. In the questionnaire, we're going to be giving people statements or questions to reflect on when considering that individual. So once we have our competency areas and we know what we want to measure, it's then about deciding how can we ensure we are measuring those constructs. So for instance, if we want to measure teamwork, we need to make sure that we have questions that really hit that mark. So it might be 6 different items looking at different aspects of teamwork. And we do this using lots of statistical analysis and decisions around deciding which items to include in our 360 questionnaire. Once we've gathered all of this data, we can then construct the questionnaire and decide who we want to be involved. So I've written here, we've got focuses and respondents. Now, as this is a team 360, it's likely that everyone within that team or group will have their own 360 and will also be responding on other people's 360s. So the focus is the individual who is the center of that 360, and the respondents is everybody else around them who is going to be giving that detailed feedback. So once we've decided, and a really important point there, I guess, actually to mention, is with respondents, so that we get the most balanced, objective and honest view, it's good to make sure we have a real range of people. So we mentioned about different types of people, so managers versus colleagues or customers, but also some people who perhaps know us better in one situation or than the other. Sometimes managers like to decide for their employees who they want to fill in the 360 for them, whereas other times it's up to the focus to decide who they want to give it to find out feedback from. So that's the kind of development operationalizing stage. Once we've done that, we then send out the questionnaire, typically via email or some sort of online system for individuals to complete the questionnaire. And as it says here, they'll be completing it for themselves and also for the other people. So it's quite a big task when we're looking at Team 360s. Once everybody has completed the 360 questionnaires, we then can create reports. Now with this, it'll be looking at an individual report, so for that individual person, and also a team report. So what this does is it takes everybody's data so that we can look for common themes, potential strengths and development areas. So it's much more a wider perspective as opposed to that single individual. These reports are really, really interesting, especially when we have a lot of quantitative and qualitative data. But most importantly, although the report is great, what we want to do is know what the consequence of doing this 360 is going to be moving forward. So here I've written using the findings for wider development. And two examples of this might be that we want to look at team building collaboration. So looking at different people and the perceptions of each individual and building it all together so that we can work more effectively as a team. As well as that, often we use them for team development. So finding out what the group skills are, or areas or gaps of knowledge, things like that, the success, so what people bring to the table, and also whether there is any potential development areas as well. As a team, where are we currently not successful? That's really important to know. So at the bottom of the page here it says what we really, really hope to do from this process. So it's not just a task or an exercise, it's a full-on process, is gain insight for ourselves and for others. So gaining insight about how other people see us, how we see ourselves, and ultimately, yeah, we might have different relationships with different people, and that's really important also to notice. As well as this, as I mentioned earlier, we want to harness the positives, so what's going really well, and also but addressing the negatives, so recognizing that there are performance gaps, and it might be an individual performance gap or it might be a team performance gap. So noticing all of these different things and then deciding how we're going to tackle these. Whilst this process sounds quite simple, there are many important considerations, and these are just a few of them that I've noted here. As I mentioned at the start, what do we want to measure? Is it company competencies, leadership behaviours, future potential, or a specific job criteria? Knowing what we want to measure is going to gear us up for success in getting the feedback and the data that we want to collect. We also need to think, how do we want to measure this? Now ultimately, because we're looking at Team 360s, we know we're going to do a 360. Okay, so why have we decided to do that? Is it because there's a number of different stakeholders and we want to gain perspectives from all of them? Do we want to use closed statements or more open statements? Some questionnaires ask you to rate them by numbers, whereas others use alternative methods, so like giving people allocating a number of stars and things like that, or giving them space to write specific examples and then qualitative data to kind of enrich what we're looking at. We need to know who will be involved. Is it going to be everybody or just certain individuals that we want to do these 360s for? And ultimately what this boils down to is, why are we doing this? Why are we taking the time? And it is time consuming to do such a task or such a process, and what do we want to get from it? So it's really good to think about the outcomes and the output almost driving the rest of the process. Where will this information feed into? Is it development? Is it some sort of performance management exercise? It might be that it's going in towards appraisals. So rather than just getting the manager's perspective for your appraisal, you're now wanting to get your wider team's perspective. So it's really important to know what we're going to use this information for. Now the last two here are really, really important, and I like to stress these. So how can we promote honest, objective and useful feedback? Okay, ultimately if we don't receive this, then the whole process hasn't worked. We want to create an environment where people feel safe to be able to give that feedback, and that it's going to be used in a positive manner, so that going forward we make an improvement. To do that, confidentiality and anonymity are really, really key. So making sure that nothing is traceable back to that individual, ensuring that people are reflecting on specific areas relevant to the job and not mentioning about anything else. We don't want anybody to sort of go off on a tangent here. So yeah, promoting an honest, objective environment for giving such useful feedback is key. And it's something we have to consider when we're doing a team one, is that there's lots and lots of people involved. Sometimes the dynamics between different people can be a bit of an issue, so this is all important considerations. As a benefit, first of all, Team 360s are a great way to improve communication. So for teams, it creates an open line of communication between them. So everybody is involved in this process. Everybody knows why they're doing it, what they're going to gain from it, that it's a wider process than just doing an individual 360. It's for the benefit of the team. So it can encourage team cohesion, team effectiveness through this communication. Linked to that, it enhances insight. So I've written here within and between. So within the team, it can enhance insight, and also within the individual. So a single individual will gain an awful lot of very useful feedback, but also they will learn about other people, because this is the team one. What we're aiming to do is create a collective 360 at the end of it. So looking at all the different key players and our perceptions from all of those different individuals. It allows individuals to gain an understanding of how they contribute to the team. Builds synergy. Providing feedback helps increase understanding and builds collaboration. So again, this links very much into the improved communication, the idea of sort of one goal and one vision, much more unity than perhaps a single individual or silo working. That synergy of everybody being involved. And it promotes development. As with an individual 360, teams reviews are key for training and development purposes. I keep going back to it, but it allows us to look at collective strengths that we want to utilize further, and also highlighting team development needs as well as individual. So skills and behaviours that are detracting from the success of the group. Because whilst it's great that one individual might be being successful, ultimately we don't work in a vacuum. So we work with other people, and that is really, really important. So leading on very quickly, we're going to just look at an example. So just so you get a little feel for what the Team 360 questionnaire might look like. So here is an example. This one is specifically looking at leadership. So the individual will fill in, they will send this questionnaire out to their respondents, who will then select which relationship they are with the person. So I report to them, I'm their manager, I'm their colleague, and so forth. There's a date and the email address. The email address is just so we can track it back. It's not, as I've mentioned before, it's all anonymous, so that's really important. We then have the different areas. So the competency areas here, two of the example ones here, is influencing and leadership. As well as on this questionnaire, they had things like motivation, dealing with pressure, dealing with change, things like that. And underneath you can see that there's 10 items per competency area. So here an individual might be asked, does this individual communicate thoughts and feelings with clarity? And we have a sort of sliding scale. So high priority for development, needs some development, effective or exceptional, or I don't know, it's not applicable. So it's typically a kind of Likert scale, from more negative to more positive behaviours. Now these phrasing, I guess, for the scale vary considerably. So it might be this is something they show a lot, or they don't show at all, they need to show more of this. So the language can change depending on the organisation or the team needs. But ultimately the person has to go through, fill in all of these different question items, and then submit the form back, we collect all of the data and generate the reports. Now this is just one example. This one is just collecting quantitative data, so the sort of tick boxes. But other 360s, we can also include open text boxes where people can write specific examples or go into a little bit more detail, and we can include those into our 360 reports. This leads us into the report itself. Now, one way to demonstrate the data is creating these sort of scales, I guess. So looking at the different competency areas and ascertaining how many people have said it's a priority for development, needs some development, effective or exceptional performance. So it splits for this questionnaire, it split them into self, manager, team members and colleagues. And this SAM candidate, leadership, very, very high. They think they're very high on leadership. Their colleagues actually think they need a little bit more development. So again, this is useful, but what it might be even more useful is if we look onto the right-hand side of the page, is it looks specifically at where people scored them for the different items. So we get another deeper level of analysis. If I was looking at this individual's 360, the key area that seems to be coming up is dealing with pressure. So they scored in the red box here, priority for development is that ability to deal with pressure. So as an individual, they're going to gain lots of information. And then if we take this collectively, hopefully what we will see is there might be some trends or patterns emerging within the data. And that's what we find in this table here. So this is analysis looking at the individual respective of the team. So the columns towards the left says own perceptions, and this individual considers themselves to be performing on all. Others' perceptions, as a group, most of the other people have suggested that actually they are exceeding on some areas and other areas perhaps need more development. The box on the right-hand side then looks at the group ratings. So rather than looking specifically at managers or team members and colleagues and things, it's now put them all together and it's ascertaining for this person or for this group how many of those individuals are suggested to need development, how many are needing performing, and how many are exceeding expectations. And the final column looks at your performance within the group. So this was a piece of work we did with 12 individuals in the team, and this individual was scoring in the upper quartile of those 12 individuals on all of the competency areas apart from decision making. We can see then they were in the middle quartile, middle section, and they needed a bit more, others perceived them to need a little bit more development in terms of their decision making. So there's loads and loads of statistics we can do, and we can create a full analysis report based on the individual 360s that we've then taken collectively to produce our Team 360. Now this has been quite a whistle-stop tour of Team 360s. Hopefully it's given you a little bit more information on where we use them and why we use them, and also maybe why a Team 360 approach is going to be more beneficial than an individual 360 approach. Or perhaps you've never used a 360 and didn't know much about it, and hopefully you've gained a little bit of insight there. In terms of costing and access, very quickly, we have lots of different options, so if you are interested in using Team 360s, then please do get in touch with us. We have a generic 360 questionnaire which has our standard 8 competencies already within it. It's ready off-the-shelf solution, and we have them at different levels. So we have a leadership one, we have one that looks at general performance competencies as well, so a leadership specific one and general performance, business performance qualities as well. We offer it up to 12 respondents, so per focus can have up to 12 respondents for their questionnaire, and that comes in at £149 plus VAT. The other option is a more bespoke questionnaire, so it might be that the competencies that we have in our generic 360 actually aren't meeting your specific needs, and you'd like to have your own items, your own questions, and your own competency areas. Here we can produce a full report, fully bespoke, with all of your logos and things like that, and the team analysis report as well. So that big piece of work that I was talking about in terms of looking at the collective data. And depending on how much you want us to do with that, different prices on application. So please do get in touch. But I know time is running out. If you do have questions, please do feel free to ask away now. And if you would like some more information, then do get in touch with us. Contact us. Our telephone number and my email address are at the end. If you've got any specific roles, we're happy to advise, give impartial advice on all the different tests we sell, which also can be accessed via our Test and Assess website. So this is our bureau of all the different tests we sell for different publishers. You can browse the different levels, different requirements, have a look at some sample questions and reports and things. Register and purchase, and it's really nice and simple. Or if you're interested as well in learning a little bit more about psychometrics, then it might be that you want to undertake our Level 2 training. So this is a BPS qualification. We now offer it as a blended learning style, so it's home study mixed with practical sessions. And what it will do is it allows you the opportunity to then use psychometric questionnaires and ability tests and things and 360s with a lot more understanding and appreciation for why we use them, where we use them, and how we can really add value to our organisations. So if these are things that you might be interested in, then do drop me an email and I can give you a few more details. In the meantime though, thank you very much for listening. I hope you found a useful webinar session. Any feedback as well, do get in touch. The Quest Partnership website is listed there, or contact myself at laura@questpartnership.co.uk. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.